Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we'll be discussing the Conan adventure, The Pit of Kutallu. Published by Modiphius, the module was released as part of Free RPG Day 2017. Now, if you're like me and you missed picking up the physical copy for Free RPG Day, have no fear because the module is available for free as a PDF on DriveThruRPG, so you can download it there and print it up as this handy little booklet. The module is 32 pages and broken into two sections. The first 17 pages are the Quickstart rules that teach new players how to use this gaming system, and the rest is the adventure as well as some pre-generated characters to use for it. Now, what I'm going to do is first go over the Quickstart rules and then review the adventure itself.
Hey, and I'm Jack the NPC. I'm going to give this one to you from a player's side of things. And spoiler, we had a hell of a lot of fun with this game, let me tell you. Crom? Oh, he was pleased.
The game uses the 2die20 rule system, which I have never used before, so our only experience with it was what we found inside the quick guide. Now, the full game rules come to over 300 pages, and shaving that down to just 17 pages was a huge endeavor. Which means I can't really comment on the game system as a whole. I can only really comment on what was presented inside this module.
In short, this means that most of our complaints probably aren't even an issue if you have access to the full rulebook. But this review ain't about the full rules. This review is only about the information that is presented between these quick guides pages.
The rules are very well laid out with some beautiful art to help get the players into the mood of Robert E. Howard's Conan. I've said in previous reviews that I judge a lot about a game from its art, and Modiphius nailed it perfectly. The system itself is extremely different than anything I've played before, and learning a new system is never easy, and the 2die20 rule system rides a razor's edge between being intuitively simple and dauntingly complex. The first thing that sets it aside from other games is doom and momentum, which are pools that the player and the game master can use to turn the game's tide. This worked beautifully in our playtest.
It was awesome. For our game, we used some coins from campaign coins to work as our doom and momentum markers, and that clink clink as they fell into the pools really added to the excitement. You know, and while we didn't find this in the quick guide rules, I am pretty sure that there's just an unspoken rule that during your game, you must play the Basso Palladorus Conan soundtrack. I mean, maybe that's not a rule. I think that's actually a law, so just trust me here.
Doom is for NPCs, while momentum is for PCs. Now, I don't know how well these pools would work in a player versus player situation, or if there's a friendly NPC that's fighting alongside the PCs against non-friendly NPCs, and that might all be handled in the full rules. But for the Pit of Kutallu, the rules in this scenario are only possible as player versus game master. Another thing which I do love about this system is complications, which are bad effects that can happen even on a successful roll, meaning that a player can pull off a roll and accomplish their goal, but they can still, fumble and drop their sword or have something else happen to them. It added a lot of fun to the game. But I really wish that they had added several examples of complications just to help me as a GM know what ideas I could do whenever a player rolled one. Now, Doom can be earned as a complication, but the Quickstart rules are unclear on the amount of Doom earned for NPC complications, saying both 1 and 2 Dooms. Now, maybe that was just a typo, or maybe that was an issue due to the shortening of the rules, but it was a point of confusion for us. So for our game, I just said it was 2 Doom and moved on. Another tiny issue is when explaining the conditions in the Quickstart rules, they use the examples of bleeding and burning. However, neither of these conditions are listed in the shortened menu of possible conditions that are in the quick guide. It's a small gripe, but GMs don't waste your time trying to figure out where the bleeding and burning conditions are because they're not in here. Now, for those other conditions, they don't matter because they're not going to be useful in the adventure. I just think that Modiphius didn't need to mention them at all here, since they're not going to be explained and there's no need to add any confusion. Now, the next thing is combat dice. That's what players roll to determine weapon damage. They're all D6. However, the game doesn't call them D6 or combat dice or CD. Instead, they just use a glyph of a phoenix. So anywhere you see a glyph of a phoenix, that just means a d6.
Excuse me, it prefers that you refer to it as the artist, formerly known as D6.
Personally, I find the use of a phoenix symbol when it could have been just as easy to have CD or D6 written there to be silly. Now, this is all nitpicking items that I'm talking about right now. However, one thing that I did have issues with was distance and range. The Conan game doesn't use distance in feet or in meters or anything like that. Instead, they use what they call zones, which those can change in size depending on various obstacles and conditions within the game. Okay, I'm cool with that, that's fine. However, the quick guide doesn't really give me any examples of how to do this, so I had a lot of difficulty visualizing how to apply zones and ranges within the game itself. This was the part of the quick guide that I really struggled with, and one or two simple diagrams or pictures that would really have helped me out in visualizing and how to apply all this together. So for our adventure, I probably applied it incorrectly because it absolutely did not click with me on how to use it, and that was a failure of the shortened rules that they had to do for the quick guide. Now, enough about rules. Let's discuss the adventure. The Pit of Kutallu is extremely short and playable in a single session. The module provides 4 pre-generated characters for you to use. There's also 2 more free characters that you can download off of the Modiphius website, giving you 6 possible characters. For our game, I used 3 players. The non-used pre-generated characters were reserved as backup characters, in case any of the PCs died.
Which was a good thing for us, because we ended up using 5 of them.
The adventure has a lot of combat and several fun scenes that give us a great snapshot of what the Conan game is all about. However, from this point forward, I'm going to be laying out all the details of the adventure, and it will be packed with spoilers. So players, if you're interested in experiencing this adventure, you should stop the video now and send your Game Master this way. It is definitely worth playing. Okay, Game Masters, let's dive in. The Pit of Kutallu is a simple scenario. After going through the Quickstart rules, which I was a little nervous about how they would play out, I printed copies of the first 17 pages into these little rule books that I gave to my players. After a short review with all my players, we started the game, and it went extremely well.
Well, what are you talking about? It was awesome! When you get asked what is best in life, the answer is this game was. This game was what was best in life. It was awesome and we loved it.
The characters begin as prisoners aboard a slaver ship. Among them, there's a noblewoman named Delia. She's not too keen on being sold as a slave, so one night, during a fierce storm, she manages to get the keys and lets the PCs free under the condition that they help her out. Now, the PCs will also find their gear once they're out of their cells. If you have the other pre-generated characters here, just in the cells with them, get ready for your players to try to loot those characters' items as well. For my game, I told them that the gear that was printed on their character sheets was the gear that they found inside the supply cache, because it wasn't necessarily the gear that they had when they were captured to begin with. The players didn't have much time to argue with this, because that moment is when the ship struck a rock and started taking on water. The only way to escape the sinking ship is with the ship's dinghy, which the slaver captain and the rest of the crew are already trying to hoist over the side for their own escape. The PCs will have to fight if they want to get it.
Hey, get your hands off my dinghy. There is no way I can say that with a straight face. I'm sorry.
There is no map provided for this ship. Personally, I would have loved one, especially with zones and ranges all marked out for me to see. So Game Masters, you're on your own as far as what the ship's layout looks like. That's not a big problem because 2 rounds into the combat, the ship is torn in half by the storm and everyone goes tumbling over the sides into the churning sea. The characters will need to swim in order to survive, hopefully making it to the dinghy if they can. On top of that, there are fishermen who are dragging the sailors and prisoners beneath the stormy waves. Among them, they seize Delia. The module says that characters who fail 2 athletic rolls or suffer a complication are sucked down, either drowning or getting captured by the deep dwellers. This was where we lost 2 characters.
Don't blame me, it's these dice. I have spent 25 years teaching them that they should roll high and not low, and they panicked under pressure. Also, it just so happens that 2 of the pre-generated characters that we'd chosen to play were the only 2 that had no expertise in athletics.
Now, there is no mention if weapons or armor cause difficulty with swim checks. So for this game, especially with how bad my players were rolling, I said that armor and swords were not an issue as far as the difficulty in swimming. Though I chose to use some of the rolled complications as they lost their shield or they lost their sword instead of losing the entire PC. GMs might need to remind the players at this point that they can use any game momentum that they have or maybe use their fortune dice to help get them through this. The module actually says that this scene will be a great scene for the players to build up some momentum that they can use later on. But thanks to some astoundingly bad dice rolls, that was not the case for us. After the storm, the characters will wash up on the shore. Now this might be a good place for them to find any weapons or armor that have washed ashore to replace the ones that they might have had to have dropped in the ocean due to any complications if you choose to take that route. Also, on the shore there are going to be some webbed tracks that lead into the jungle.
These look to be those tracks of those things that took Delia. We should follow them. That way we can get that money she promised us. Also, maybe we'll get a bonus for rescuing her a second time.
The last thing on the beach are going to be several slavers who are going to try to capture the PCs again. The PCs will either have to fight them or escape by fleeing into the jungle. Either way, it should be pretty exciting. Eventually, the sounds of drums will lead the PCs deeper and deeper into the jungle and into a swamp. There's a few encounters they can have along the way here, including giant crocodiles. The sounds of drumming will lead them to a ruined city with a mossy, ancient ziggurat standing at its very heart.
Okay, these drums are definitely coming from inside that creepy pyramid. I'm just gonna go on a hunch here and say this is probably bad.
On their way to the temple, they're going to have to fight some deep dwellers as well as some hybrid cultists that are going to be protecting it. It was during this combat scene that the game system finally really clicked with us, and it went really smoothly for us from here on forward. Once they've defeated their enemies and they enter the temple, they'll descend into a circular room with a bunch of cultists who are dropping prisoners one by one into an enormous pit. The exact setup of what this room looks like with the pit and the platform and everything isn't very well described in the module, and I would have really loved to have had a map here, especially a map with ranges and zones marked out. The map that I came up with had several entrances along the different sides that the PCs could use to sneak up behind the cultists and maybe have a nice surprise attack. But a failed roll with a complication put that plan to a halt when one of the PCs fell into the room, drawing everyone's attention.
Stop blaming me! Blame these stupid dice! They keep rolling 20s!
What resulted was an enormous fight, with one prisoner being dropped into the pit every single round. The PCs were a race against time to rescue Delia, who was the final prisoner in line. For my game, I had it to where the PCs couldn't actually see the tentacled horror down inside the pit until they got really close to the side, and at that point they had to overcome the fear that it caused from just the sight of it. It led to a few great moments within the middle of combat.
Come on, you filthy cultists! Taste my steel and holy crap! What in Crom's name is that?
Once Delia is saved, the game is done. However, there are a few ideas and suggestions in the final portion of the module that give GMs an idea of how the game could keep going from there. One thing that the adventure does not include is any treasure at the temple. Game masters might want to add some goodies that the PCs could find, things that the deep dwellers and cultists have acquired from all of their previous victims. I also suggest that you place some of those goodies down inside the pit, forcing the players to go down there in order to retrieve them. This would be the same setup as when Conan has to go down inside the giant snake pit to get the treasure in the 1982 film. Of course, the Beast of Kutallu was also down there. So what I recommend is that you have some spot down inside the pit where the Beast of Kutallu can kind of get cover away from archers. That way they can't just stand up outside the pit and shoot it until it's dead. You make it so that they actually have to go down inside the pit in order to face it. Another option would be that there's like an old support column that's down inside the pit, and if the PCs elect to not go down there because they're afraid to face it and kill the beast, you have the Enraged beast, knock out that support column, and it causes either the floor to collapse, meaning the PCs go tumbling down in there, or it causes the walkway above the pit to kind of drop a bit, creating a ramp that the Beast of Cataldo can then charge up and chase and attack the PCs. Overall, the Beast of Kutallu adventure is a very solid game, and it was a lot of fun. Despite any reservations that I had about it because I wasn't used to the system, Modiphius did an amazing job fitting all the rules and the adventure into a very small package. I plan on revisiting Conan in the future, starting with To Race the Thunder, the free adventure inside the official Conan Quick Guide. So for those of you that are thinking about giving this adventure a test drive, there are 2 free adventures out there, both available on DriveThruRPG. But I recommend you give the Pit of Kutallu a look.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you want to see some more of our stuff, just hit that little subscribe button. But until next time, gamers, you have yourselves a great day. What the? Do you have like a barbarian straw I could use? I need some help.